England, 1649, in the courtyard of Whitehall Palace. King Charles I placed his head on the executioner's block. With a single swing of the axe, the English monarchy died, or so Parliament thought. But 300 miles away in Scotland, a 19-year-old prince was about to make a declaration that would change everything. Charles II proclaimed himself the rightful King of England, Scotland, and Ireland. For the next 11 years, he would rule without a kingdom, fight without an army, and survive without a crown. This is the tale of the king without a crown. The prince in Exile, when Charles II learned of his father's execution. The Hague, surviving on charity. At 19, he inherited 3 kingdoms he couldn't enter, and a crown that existed only in his mind. But Charles was different from his father. Where Charles I had been rigid, Charles II was flexible. His first test came when the Scottish Parliament offered to recognize him as king, but only if he abandoned his Anglican faith and became Presbyterian. Charles understood something his father never had. Sometimes a king must bend so that he doesn't break. He signed their covenant, knowing it was the first step toward reclaiming his birthright. In 1650, Charles landed in Scotland to claim his northern kingdom, but he found a nation that treated him more like a prisoner than a king. Meanwhile, Oliver Cromwell was marching north with England's most professional army at the Battle of Dunbar. Cromwell destroyed the Scottish forces. Charles watched his hopes die in the heather. But instead of fleeing back to exile, he made a desperate decision. He would invade England itself. The last Iomvia 1651. His army was made up of reluctant nobles, Highland clansmen, and a handful of English royalists who had risked everything for their king. At Worcester, September 3rd, 1651, Charles fought the battle that would decide his fate. He led from the front, showing personal courage that would mark his entire reign. But Cromwell's army outnumbered the royalists 2-1 as his forces crumbled. Charles faced a choice: die a king's death or flee and live as an exile. He chose to live. And that choice led to one of history's most remarkable escape stories. The Great Escape. For 6 weeks, the King of England became the most wanted fugitive in his own realm. Cromwell put £1,000 on his head, enough to buy a large estate. Charles spent his first night hiding in an oak tree while soldiers searched below. Over the following weeks, he disguised himself as a servant, a woodcutter, and finally as a manservant to Jane Lane. He learned to walk like a commoner and speak in regional dialects. The most dangerous moment came when a blacksmith recognized him. Instead of claiming the reward, the man simply said, "God bless you wherever you go," and kept his secret. after 6 weeks of narrow escapes. Charles reached the coast and sailed to France. He was safe, but more alone than any English king had ever been. The education of a Kayan-Githa, next 9 years of exile, taught Charles lessons no royal education could provide. He lived in poverty, dependent on charity and occasional secret donations from English supporters. He learned to speak French like a native, to understand European politics, and to appreciate people who valued him for himself rather than his title. He had affairs, enjoyed wine and conversation, and developed the wit and charm that would later make him popular. But exile taught him harder lessons too. He watched his mother die in poverty, saw loyalty depend on fortune, and learned that today's ally could become tomorrow's enemy. Most importantly, he learned patience. While other exiled royals plotted invasions, Charles waited. He understood his restoration would come when the English people grew tired of Republican rule. The changing tide by 1658, cracks appeared in Cromwell's Commonwealth. When Oliver Cromwell died, his son Richard proved incapable of holding the Republic together. England teetered on the brink of anarchy. Charles positioned himself not as a vengeful king seeking revenge, but as a healing monarch who could unite the nation. He promised religious tolerance, amnesty for enemies, and respect for property rights. This was genius. Instead of threatening revenge, Charles offered reconciliation. General George Monk, commander in Scotland, made the decision that changed history. He marched south and opened negotiations for Charles's restoration. The return of the King on May 29, 1660, his 30th birthday, Charles II entered London in triumph. The same people who had cheered his father's execution now welcomed the son home. Church bells rang, wine flowed in the streets, and bonfires burned on every corner. But Charles remembered exile's lessons. He pardoned most enemies, confirmed Commonwealth property transfers, and avoided religious persecution. Only those directly responsible for his father's death faced execution. The man who returned in 1660 was transformed from a naive prince into a sophisticated politician who understood both the possibilities and limitations of royal power. The Merry Emoan, R.C.H. Charles II's reign became known as the Restoration period, marked by a flowering of arts, science, and culture. The king, who had learned to appreciate life during poverty, created a court celebrating pleasure and learning. He founded the Royal Society, patronized artists like Christopher Wren, and rebuilt London after the Great Fire of 1666. When faced with conflicts, Charles chose compromise over confrontation, understanding his crown was secure only with popular support. His reign had controversies: his deathbed conversion to Catholicism, numerous mistresses, and secret French agreements. But he navigated these with political skills learned during his crownless years. The legacy of Exile. When Charles died in 1685, he left behind a transformed monarchy. His father's divine right absolutism was replaced by flexible, pragmatic royal power. Future monarchs would rule with parliament, not over it. Charles proved that adversity could strengthen royal character. His years as king without a crown taught him empathy, patience, and survival in a hostile world. Modern historians recognize Charles II as one of England's most successful monarchs, not for conquests or battles, but for adapting monarchy to changing times. The mystery RAMA is, despite extensive research, mysteries about Charles's exile persist. Recent archaeological discoveries across Europe have uncovered secret royalist networks that funded his exile. In 2019, renovation at a Normandy chateau revealed a hidden room with Charles's letters detailing secret negotiations historians never suspected. DNA analysis suggests Charles may have fathered children during exile, potential royal bloodlines never officially acknowledged. The king without a crown continues revealing new secrets, reminding us that even well-documented periods hold surprises. Charles II's story proves that losing everything can be the only way to discover what truly matters. His 11 years of exile stripped away royalty's external trappings and forced him to discover what kind of man he really was. The crown he eventually wore was the same his father lost, but the man wearing it was fundamentally different. Charles learned true kingship came not from divine appointment, but from understanding and serving his people's needs. His transformation from exiled prince to successful monarch shows that adversity can teach, flexibility can be strength, and sometimes the longest path to success is the surest. If you're fascinated by stories of resilience, royal intrigue, and incredible comebacks, hit that like button right now. Your support helps us uncover more amazing tales of historical figures who overcame adversity to change the world. Subscribe to our channel to discover more incredible stories of survival and triumph from history's most challenging periods. We're constantly finding new evidence about extraordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. Drop a comment below and tell us which historical comeback story should we explore next. Your suggestions help us decide which incredible tales to investigate. And share this video with anyone who loves royal history or inspiring tales of people who refused to give up. They'll be amazed by the story of the king who learned to rule by first learning to survive. Charles II's story reminds us that sometimes the most powerful crown is earned through adversity rather than inherited through birth? What other hidden lessons are waiting in history's greatest survival stories?